So in the first video I showed you how to create a basic simple archetype Maven project and sort of update your POM, blindly update your POM.xml. For right now, let's skip past what is actually in the POM.xml just to get you working with a Maven project. This project, or excuse me, this video I'm going to show you how to do coding with Maven. How to build a project, how to do a class. So give it a shot. Let's see, new class. I'm going to call it rectangle. And I'm going to put it in package shape and give it a finish. Good old rectangle, and I'm going to give it a couple of attributes: private int width, private int length. I'm going to create my constructors. Right-click source, generate constructor using fields. Give it an OK. Then I'm going to give it some getters and setters. Again, source, generate getters and setters. Those guys. Okay, going to give me a couple of methods. Public double. How about double area? Return get width. That looks good to me. Public double per emitter. Can't type today. Turn 2 times get width plus 2 times get length, and class is ready to go. Now let's get rid of this empty garbage because I don't need this, because I actually have some code. Sources, resources can stay. Test. Again, well, the resources, I don't care about that. The test is what I care about. I'm going to go and create a new package called, not a new package, excuse me, a new class. Take that back. A new JUnit test case. That's what I want. I'm going to call it test rectangle. And I'm going to put it under package shape. So far, so good. Give it a finish. Now, I told you what these do. These before class, after class, before and after. These run before before every test, after every test, before each test, after each test. And I'm going to have a method called test area. Okay, so I'm going to say rectangle. REC1 equals new rectangle, passing in 10 and 40, let's say. And I'm going to say double D area, D expected area, equals 400. And then I'm going to say double D expected perimeter, good enough, equals gee, what would that be? 20 plus 80, 100. Okay. Then I'm going to say assert equals, and I'm going to say rec1 dot area, comma, D expected area, comma, 0.01. The 0.01, when I'm trying to compare a double to a double, I got to tell it some precision. I believe that's called the gamma. I'm going to do the same thing for the next one. Assert equals rec1 dot perimeter. There it is. D expected perm, comma 0.01. And then I'm going to save that and run it. I'm going to run it as a unit test. And when this runs, I get green because 400 is equal to that area, 10 times 40, and 100 is equal to that perimeter. 20 plus 80 is 40. If I had it wrong, if I said 401 and run it, my unit test comes back as red, and it'll tell me which one failed if I double click. Now, it doesn't say that the area failed. It says that this does not equal this. That's where, in other words, this doesn't know what that test really means. It just knows that 400 does not equal 401, so therefore fail this test. And if I looked at it, by the way, if I wanted to see what that failure was, double click, it'll tell me where the failure is. And down here, it'll tell me what the actual message is. It says Java Lang assertion error expected 400, but was actually 401, which tells me I've got these parameters backwards, the expected and the actual. It's expected and then actual. I have actual then expected. So let's just make sure I got it right. Let's flip-flop them around. And there we go. And I'm going to flip this one up. And back to 401 again. And it's going to ask me to save, run it again. And there it is. Expected 401, but it was actually 400. All right, change it back to 400. And there we go. So that's how you do a unit test. And now let me show you how to do a build. So I'm going to right click the project, PS2, go to Maven, go to Run As, that's what I meant to say, Run As Clean. I'm going to start with a clean first. And all clean does is it looks for a directory called target, and anything under the target directory it deletes. That's all it does. So if you looked under your file system, there's a directory called target underneath PS2. When I do a Maven clean, deletes it. Deletes everything under target. I'm going to go back to PS2 and then say run as. I'm going to pick number 6, Maven build, and give it 2 goals. Clean install. No comma, all lowercase, clean install. And click run. So it did a clean, and you're going to probably get the same error. Let's see, it says, please ensure that you're running JDK 1.4 and not a JRE. How did I get this? So I'm going to go to Windows Preferences. I'm going to go to Java, and I'm looking for the compiler. Hold on. Sorry about that. Pause it for a second because I forgot where that thing was. If I go to Windows Preferences and then filter for ENV for environment, under Java install JREs, you notice that it's pointing to JRE 1.8. whatever, 1.8.121. I don't have this pointing to a JDK. I have it pointing to a JRE. The JRE doesn't have a JDK. Doesn't have a compiler. So let me unselect this, say add a standard VM, and I want to pick my Java home, which I know is under C. It's under my C directory, under program files, under Java, JDK 121. That's the newest one. Click OK. Click Finish. Make sure I have that checked and set as default. Give that an apply. Give it an OK. I'm going to clear my messages here. And I'm going to try that again. I'll go to Run As, Maven Build, Clean Install. Clean Install. And it's going to run. It's going to do a clean. That's a good sign. Got past that JDK garbage. And let's see what happened here. So it found my project, it compiled all my classes, and then it went to look for my tests, right? So it went to look under the test directory, and it looked for any class that begins or ends with the word test. Test rectangle, rectangle test. If you just had the word rectangle in here, Maven will skip over it. So it found that test, and then it looked for any unit tests in that class. It found one, ran it, and it worked. And then after it worked, it built my project and then dropped all my files off in Target. If I refresh this guy, there's a refresh here. If I refresh, look what comes out of this. PS201, 001 snapshot.jar. What this Maven build did was it found all my classes, compiled them all, ran all my unit tests, and then created a jar file for me. There's other goals that you can do with this, but this one drops my program into a jar file and drops it into my target directory. Really powerful stuff. This would have been like 9 steps, like manual steps to do. If a unit test would have failed, so let's go back to here and make it back to 401. If I right click and say run as Maven build, clean install, and run that again, it's going to compile, it's going to find my unit test case, and it's going to fail it. And it's going to fail my build. And it's going to fail, and it's going to say, it's going to tell you why it failed. The assert failed, and blah, blah, blah. In other words, all this stuff is the same thing you would have seen in the JUnit test runner window. It's going to tell you exactly why it failed. If it fails, the target directory should be empty. Let's see. If I refresh, it's, well, empty enough. It doesn't have the jar file there. So what this does is it compels me to make sure that that my unit tests are not only there, but they work. Put it back up to 400. I'm going to compile that again. I'm going to say run, build, clean install, let it run, and it's success. So now, and there it is, success. Let's try one last thing. If I go back to JUnit and I run CISC181, click that. Now, it's also a JUnit runner, but this is an interesting thing. So what this does is, when JUnit runs, it'll color code my code to tell me what was actually executed. So it tells me that green means that it was executed and executed correctly. In other words, it didn't fail. There wasn't a failure here. If I go back over to my Package Explorer, go back into the rectangle code, you notice that this is also green and some parts are red. So what this means is when the code actually ran, that was executed. When the code actually ran, that was executed. This was, this was, this was. These two weren't. The setters weren't. The setters weren't because there's nothing that's calling the setters. If I wanted to force the setters to be called, I'd say set length, passing in width. Set width, passing in length. Okay. Save that again. Go back over to test rectangle, run the CISC181 code tool again. It runs. Go back to the Package Explorer, rectangle, and the setters are called. Very, very cool stuff. Very powerful. Well, this will tell you not only do you have unit test coverage or cases, but you actually have coverage. It's actually touching your code. And I can look at my little coverage view, and it'll tell me everything that was covered. So under this, under the rectangle, every bit of the code was covered. And under the test cases, every bit of the code was covered. Great. Hope this helps. PS2 is close to this, right? In other words, what you have to do is kind of the same. You have a rectangle. Excuse me, I have a rectangle. You have a class where you're trying to find evens and odds and primes and all that cool stuff. But it's the same idea. The code's going to be different, but how you're going to set it up and build it is essentially the same. I hope this video helps. Please let me know through Piazza if you have any questions. Thank you.